Hello, and thank you for joining us on today's episode of Activating Consciousness. And I'm really excited to bring you Edward von Busch. Hello there, Eduard. How are you doing today?
Hello, Gary. Thank you. It's quite fine. It's a sunny day in Sweden, so it's quite a good day.
And you've captured it on video as well, so it does prove for everybody that may see this that there is sunshine in Sweden.
Yeah, it's not a screen.
Fantastic. Well, before we get going today, I just want to send an acknowledgement out to our mutual friend Marcus Olin, who in fact is one of my work colleagues who brought you and I together. So I'm really appreciative of Marcus. So as we get going today, would you mind letting our audience know just a little bit more about you? Because I know we're going to talk about no blame cultures today, which I think is a wonderful topic. But how did that idea come into mind for you? Who is Edward? It would be great to hear a bit more.
I'm original from the south of Sweden. Well, I live there. In my background, I've spent 19 years in the armed forces, and after that, I transited to private sector. And I've been working in several branches and different companies and so on. And now I work on a consultancy base. And all that brings together, since I'm very keen on management and especially leadership, I have more or less put together to see what does really work, what does not really work, and so on. What is the culture approach to our leadership, and how do we get results from management? So that's why I came up with the idea that what is anti-scapegoat management, what is no blame culture, and that was how the idea evolved.
So interesting. And I'd love if we could maybe start. I'm really curious how your time in the forces may have informed that thinking.
From my point of view, I started up in the mid 80s during sports and so on, coming in contact with leadership through different various sorts of athletics. And then it was, since we have a conscription in Sweden, I was in to the Royal Marines equivalent in UK. And that was also a very tough and good leadership that I managed and learned from. And then my idea of staying in the armed forces continued. And being a generalist, I could do different paths and try different branches and forces in that case. So I evolved in different cultures as well and see what works, what doesn't work, how is different types of leadership and management get into place and so on. So that's the very thing that I really like about management.
So tell me, where's the kernel? Where was this inspiration for you to bring to life your work around no blame culture? Where did that ignite for you?
It ignited in several occasions, different occasions, because during the years I have had the privilege of having both good managers and quite not so good managers. And what did I learn from those that were good? Okay, I want to copy them. And on the bad side or the downside, I said, no, I don't want to repeat that mistake, but I did in my own ways. So, but having role models in that case, even though where you are, it's very important. I call it the natural mentorship that we have to have in organizations and companies. That we always have to learn from each other. The younger have to look up to the elder, and the elder have to learn from the younger to see what's going on, what's the transition, and how do we evolve together.
You've just struck one of the most incredible topics for me, actually. How do we learn from those people that are younger than us, as well as us mentoring those that are younger than us? And I think that's a huge topic. So maybe you'd like to take us through a little bit of what makes up a no blame culture for for the work that you do. I'd love to learn a bit more about that.
Yeah, see if you can share the screen here. Is it possible?
Yes, you should be able to. You should be able to
share. So if we take this picture, that's showing the beach with some rocks and so on, a sea star even. And I will do like, perhaps like this. What's the most basic thing to get into an organization? It's the goal management. What is the subject? Why are we here together? What are our focus? That's why the goal management has to be very clear and very precise, that we all understand what is going on and what direction are we going. And to ask for myself, do I want to take part of this journey or not? It's very important to have that common ground and seeing what we all see. We have to work with continuous improvements in order to get to different goals and the vision and the part goals in that case, so how to acknowledge them, but to always have this continuous improvement that we evolve in that case, to learn steadily in a continuous pace in that case. It's very important for organization as well. And what happens if we not hit plan, if we get a result that we didn't have, was in our meant to be? Well, then we have to have a deviation management that works in that case, and that must be a very objective handling of that, because we are very subjective as individuals, and here comes the blame game culture that I call it. It was not our fault, it was their fault. We can have different Excel files and a lot of data and stuff to saying, oh, it was not our problem, it was not our fault, it was sales department's fault or something like that. And that is not a very contributing part to the overall result for the organization. We must also use a transformative leadership in that case to see that we can get transformation from each other, from one another, to all of us. That is very needed in that case, that we succeed in this case. We must have a feedback culture that we can express our thoughts and views regarding what kind of behavior do we have towards each other. And I also twisted that apart further, that we must have an active and positive reporting situation. And the positive reporting is not saying that, oh, everything is fine, just carry on and so on. No, it's not about that. It's about the culture that I can bring up subjects, ideas, suggestions without getting some sort of mishandling from my management or something like that. But I can allow myself to reach my hand, raise my voice and say, I don't think this is a good idea. Or I have an idea here, why can't we try it like this? So that's a very, very important area to be into. By having this, we can also create co-responsibility among each other, that we take further actions and further steps, that we commit ourselves to the overall goal, the overall organization. That's why it's very important that we care in that case. We also need transparency, that we know what's going on, that there is no hidden agenda, that we know that when I do like this, I get a result like this, and so on. It's a supportive culture as well, because we know what will come back to us if we do it in like this. So it's all hanging on together in that case, and this creates the no blame culture, anti-scapegoat management in that case.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. And the thing that just really screams out to me, Edward, is the humanity.
Yeah.
The humanity that speaks out through every one of those different aspects. I find it so interesting, because you call it anti-scapegoat, but I would call it pro-human.
Indeed, even better in that case, pro-human, because it's when we are down to a personal commitment that our decision also becomes serious, that we're not just getting stuck behind desk or something like that, pressing enter on the keyboard and so on, sending out tasks and so on. But that we know that there is a human behind the role. That is also very important to get into the leadership part.
So good. So how's this being received? Because like when this podcast, as we say, it's called Activating Consciousness. I love it because I think this is a really consciousness raising approach. It's certainly the antithesis to a lot of ways that companies currently still organize very innocently, because it's very much the old way of thinking. What are some of the challenges that you're facing, or maybe you're overcoming through this work?
From a perspective that we quite not often know what our possibilities are, we are losing a lot of, it is a huge gap, because where could we be? But we always measure where we are. So the potential is that we can get a lot of longer, further. And even though the situation with the pandemic and so on, we can learn a lot from this, since this is the natural environment for sort of us as human beings. The situation we had before with a post-war production society, that was not the normal thing for us humans, that everything is cyclic and so on. But this is the new, that's why we have evolved. So, and that's even further important to have a value development mindset for organization. That we have an organizational effect and result on one hand, and we have the personal development for individuals. And that, when it goes hand in hand, is quite a good solution. It's a very good solution, because if we just in a company or an organization just to serve, well, we see each other just like more like staff. I'm just here, I get my pay, and then I'm off. So be it. But if we start to think in ourselves as, okay, we can co-work together, then co-working creates that we know that my role is this, your role is that, then the organizational result gets even higher. And if we can cooperate on a even further scale, we become co-creators, and by that the organization gets the full result, since we all collaborate and co-create together. And that's a very idea to follow up for organizations to really nourish in that case.
I think this is brilliant. So I'm going to share a real life example. My own work organization, actually where Marcus and I work, we're part of the same team. We actually increased sales by 6 million and gross margin by 1.5 million. And it's easier to measure as a sales team. But the only thing we shifted was exactly as you're showing on the screen right now. And for those listening by audio, we moved from probably more of a co-working relationship where we worked together, we respected each other, but we just did the job, to a new way of being, which was, how do we co-create the vision, the values? What does good look like? What are the barriers? Why are you facing that barrier, Marcus, when I'm not facing it as Gary? And really moving through these challenges together rather than leaving someone flailing on the side. So I just wanted to bring that as a real life evidence example of what Edward is sharing with us today really does add monetary value as well as human value. So I just wanted to reinforce your message today, Eduard.
Indeed, and that's, as you said, it's a huge opportunity for culture of organizations and result by that, since we have so much to gain from that.
So good. Are there any sort of interesting companies that you're speaking to, or that you're working with that are really inspiring you at the moment, or maybe people you're observing that are inspiring you as they move towards this type of culture?
The management partners that I belong to, we work with any company that need our assistance in that case. We have our offices in Malmö and in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden, and addressing different companies, different levels. It could be startups, it could be medium-sized companies, it could be in the government area as well, municipality as well. So we we help out where we are needed.
Yeah, no, absolutely amazing. So, what's your hope when you think about the topic of this podcast? What do you see occurring in terms of this potential consciousness shift within the world of work? Do you believe it's something that's going to stay? Is it something? Are we going to go back to what was pre-pandemic? What's your thoughts and feelings around that topic, Edward?
But that's a very good question. I often get this question regarding, it's modern leadership. It's a modern way of thinking. And my response is, how old is humanity? How old is the human species? 100,000 years old? 200,000 years old? 90% of that time we have lived in groups among about 10 people. And the last 10%, then we have this huge expansion of society and people on the globe and so on. Our mind is still 100,000 years old. So there's nothing new there. Leadership is something that we have to get back to the roots on. Because that's the problem is created by the industrial wave in that case, and even the post-war production society, that everything is square and it's cogs going around, and every individual were assigned a position in this cog machinery and so on. But we have to look at each other as what is the function and what is the individual, because always an individual that fulfills the function, but the function is needed. So that's why it must be correlating together. And also about this modern thinking that I'm always referring to, why did Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart compose classical music? Well, they made the music, at that time, that was the music of the day. Now we call it classical, but that's our view to the past. That's why we have to be to see in the very whole range of how is humanity or the machine, the humankind, what is our limits? What do we need to get management going in that case? Because leadership is about followers and following.
So good. You know what's coming up for me? I've been diving a lot into the topic of sustainability and regeneration recently, Eduard, and you're speaking really powerfully to me to almost, so there's a respect to sort of almost ancient and indigenous wisdom. Actually, we've been here, the planet's 4 billion years old. Like you say, we've been here a few 100,000 years. And it's only been the last 100 that we've really seen the sort of major challenges that we're now facing. And I just love that you're really bringing a solution with no blame culture. What I see in it is an inclusive way of being, a diverse way of being, a self-managed way of being. It's a very natural approach, it feels. It doesn't feel like it's stuck in boxes. It feels very organic. Would that be a fair comment, or would you challenge that?
I would say that it would be quite fair, because if I show you another screen here, it's not about you being right or wrong as a manager, but that you create an environment for creativity and initiative as a leader, that we have the empowerment coming from all over the organization, not just that, not just the top down to say, okay, do like this, do like this. No. We have to get all energy, because every human is the same amount of energy. It's just about how I use this energy in a way that could be manageable in that case, because it's not about the powerful steering. It's about steering power. It's like a river going around rocks and towards the ocean and so on. It carves its way, and we have to take that into ability. And we must also not be afraid of the conflict, because it's about handling the conflict to get past it. Now we're just bumping into each other and just steer off, instead of say, okay, how can we make this work? because this is the natural way of evolution. And for that case, making someone else great is greater than yourself being the greatest.
Stunning. What a lovely way for us to be wrapping up, Edward. I love that so much. And what I really, really appreciate about this as well is, I like to be challenging. I like us to be constructive. What could be some of the downsides of this? And I just don't see it, because what I see in this is, like I say, it's in line with nature's systems. It's grounded in, you say, even the friction that fuels innovation. If we don't have that friction, we don't have the new ideas, we don't have the new insights, we don't reimagine what good could be. And I just think everything you're speaking to there brilliantly for me is just so exciting. So I was really looking forward to seeing where you're going to be in a couple of years' time with no blame cultures. Honestly, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
And it's very interesting that you mentioned this, because Microsoft made an investigation last year in Europe, quite large, and production wasn't so much of an issue going down, well, some percents and so on, but the horrible thing was that innovation was going down the drain totally. And that's why we don't meet up as we used to, like in the corridors or in chat in rooms and so on, that we are now on the distance. And that's why it's important in this leading on distance that we focus on the psychological closeness instead of the physical distance, that we overbring the screen and go through the screen in that case. And if you don't want to work by a screen, okay, use your telephone, call. It's make it an analog way in that case. So
I love it. Again, respecting the old in its own way.
Just because it's old, it's not bad.
Love it. Yeah. And if you're listening, I'm getting old, so that's a really fair comment. Thank you, Edward. So how can people find you? What's the best way to reach out to you? Websites, social media handles?
I'm on LinkedIn if one wants to connect on LinkedIn. Otherwise, try our homepage, Management Partners, to see what comes up, and we can make some sort of solutions and arrangements to help out situations.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure all of those details are in the show notes of the podcast, and also underneath this conversation on YouTube. And Eduard, thank you so much for your time. It's been a brilliant conversation. Good luck in all you're doing. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Gary. Thank you.
Cheers.